and the golden age is coming back. In the same 1919, when the Ottoman Empire is collapsing and it is losing all its non-Turkish possessions, all the Arab parts of the Ottoman Empire are falling away, the Greek army now invades the Turkish mainland, Anatolia. And the Turkish people now have a tremendous fright in their hearts because the Greeks hate them with a PhD in hatred. So Britain now has to create a Turkish general who would appear to the Turkish people as a savior who has come down from the heavens with his hands resting on the wings of angels to save the Turkish people. And so at a place called Gallipoli, a man named Mustafa Kemal inflicts a defeat on the ruling state in the world, Britain, and immediately climbs the ladder to become the hero of all heroes in Turkish history. Very convenient, isn't it? Mustafa Kemal now takes over. He is in fact de facto ruler over the Ottoman Empire, and the Khalifa is just a piece of furniture. In 1920, I think, or 21, there was a big treaty, negotiations in Versailles, and from this emerged now the Turkish Republic, which replaces the Ottoman Islamic State. But Mustafa Kemal said, the Turkish people love their Khalifa. So if Europe could have a pope, why can't we have a pope too? This was simplistic thinking on the part of Mustafa Kemal. If the Europeans could have a pope, well, so too can we. So the new Turkish government of Mustafa Kemal decided to take the Khilafah and remove from it all political authority and make the Khalifa the equivalent of the Pope. This was 1922. And things were going fine for him. Turkish people were happy. Khilafah is still there. And the leadership of the revolution in Turkey were very happy because we have a secular state now, modeled after the European state. But in 1924, on the 3rd of March, suddenly Britain demanded, of course, this is secret, they wouldn't reveal it, Britain demanded of Mustafa Kemal that he must abolish the Khilafah. The demand came from Britain. And on the 3rd of March 1924, the Turkish Republic abolished the Khilafah. The question we have to ask is, why did they do it when there was no need to do it? Nothing. It represented no threat whatsoever to the secular Turkish Republic. The answer for the abolition of the Khilafah on the 3rd of March 1924 is located in a place called India. But even the Indian scholars of Islam are not aware of it. Even they are not aware of it. When the attack on the Khilafah was taking place in the 1916, 17, 18 period, then Indian ulama, at that time the Indian Muslim community was one of the most influential Muslim communities in the world. And the Indian Muslim community was led by leaders who knew Islam and lived Islam. Men like Maulana Muhammad Ali Jawhar, Maulana Shaukat Ali, Maulana Sayyid Sulaiman Nadwi, Mufti Kifayatullah, men who knew Islam and lived Islam. And they wanted to get rid of British imperial rule in India, so that when they got rid of the British, they could restore Islamic rule over Muslims. That's all they wanted. Get rid of the British, and restore Islamic rule over Muslims. And they realized that they could mobilize the Muslim masses of India over this issue of the Khilafah, because everybody loved the Khilafah. And so they established a movement which they call the Khilafat movement, Harakatul Khilafah, the Khilafat movement. When they established the Khilafat movement and it began to mobilize the Muslim masses, the body which was sleeping is now waking up for revolutionary struggle to preserve the Khilafah in Istanbul. The leader of the Hindus realized, but wait a minute, the Muslims want the same thing that we want. We also want, the Hindus, we want to get rid of the British, and we want to restore Hindu rule over the Hindus. So there's a conversion of interest here. So Gandhi, who later became known as Mahatma Gandhi, Gandhi approached the leadership of the Khilafat movement and he said to them, listen, the same thing you want, the same thing I want. So why don't we join forces? Will you allow me to join the Khilafat movement? And guess what the leadership of the Indian Muslims did? It was revolutionary theory on their part, and we praise them tonight. They admitted, they accepted the offer of Gandhi, and they formed an alliance. And so the Khilafat movement in India now became a Hindu-Muslim alliance for the purpose of getting rid of British rule. And then that would replace, that which would replace British rule would be Islamic rule over Muslims and Hindu rule over Hindus. This constituted the most dangerous of all threats that Western civilization have ever experienced in its entire period of colonization of mankind. This Khilafat movement. Because the Western objective was to demolish every existing state structure in the world and replace it with the secular state. So that eventually the secular state could be brought under the umbrella of a League of Nations and eventually a United Nations, and this would be political globalization at work. If the Khilafat movement were to succeed, then one of the most important communities in the world, the Indian Muslims, will escape. Because when the British withdrew, Muslims will be ruled by Islam and Hindus will be ruled by Hinduism. Between 1920 and 1924, the Khilafat movement was building up steam at an alarming rate. And by 1924, the British had calculated, we have to get rid of this Khilafat movement. And the only way we can think of now is to abolish the Khilafat. And so they put the pressure on Mustafa Kemal. As soon as the Khilafat was abolished, the Khilafat movement in India began to lose steam. In the same year that it was abolished in 1924, in that same year, the secularly minded British, in Indian language they call it chamcha, the stooges of the British in India, the brown-skinned Englishmen parading as Muslims, of whom the prince of them all was the grandfather of the present Aga Khan, Karim Aga Khan's grandfather. They now restore an organization called the All India Muslim League. The All India Muslim League is led by men who don't know Islam and don't live Islam. And these are the people who now wage a struggle for the liberation of the Muslims from British rule to be replaced, not with rule of Islam, oh no, but rather by the rule of the secular Republic of Pakistan and the secular Republic of India, so that Pakistan and India could be embraced within the community of secular nation states. But of course you had to put a little red herring to fool the people. So you have to make it appear as though Pakistan is going to emerge as an Islamic state, but that's just dust in their eyes, to fool those who see with only one eye. And so in 1924, on the 3rd of March, the Caliphate was abolished. When the Caliphate was abolished, Sharif al-Hosein realized that he was in grave danger now. So long as there was a Khalifa in Istanbul, the British needed him. But now that the Caliphate was destroyed, abolished, Sharif al-Hosein now realizes the plan. He says, oh my gosh, they're going to send Abdulaziz ibn Saud to cut my throat now. In exactly the same way that Abdullah of Jordan is now realizing, as soon as Bush attacks Iraq, that is the end of me. So Sharif al-Hosein decides 4 days later, on the 7th of March 1924, to claim the Khilafah for himself. But when you're a client state of Britain, you can't do that. You have to first apply to the British government for permission to become the Khalifa. He didn't do that. As soon as Sharif al-Hosein claimed the Khilafat for himself on the 7th of March 1924, you're going to get all of this information in that book which is outside, the Caliphate, the Hijaz and the Saudi Wahhabi nation state. As soon as he did that, Britain gave the green light to Abdulaziz. Attack. Within 6 months, the Saudi army of Abdulaziz ibn Saud conquered Mecca. And Abdulaziz and Sharif Hussain packed his suitcase and off he went. British took him away. This one the Americans will take out of Jordan. And so Abdulaziz ibn Saud is now in control of Mecca and eventually Medina. It's a Saudi Wahhabi alliance. Does he claim the Khilafah for himself now? No. What he does is, as soon as he enters Mecca, in 1924, October, Abdulaziz ibn Saud makes a proclamation, and they're going to hate me for revealing this to you, because nobody remembers it now. The proclamation which he makes is that this land belongs to the entire Ummah. This land belongs to the entire Ummah. I wonder how a Pakistani or a Bengali Muslim will feel when he hears that, and he's been rounded up like dogs, stray dogs, and put on trucks because he's overstayed his visa, while white-skinned Americans and British are treated like princes in the Holy Land. How would a Pakistani or Indian or Bangladeshi feel? This land belongs to the entire Ummah. And it is for the Ummah, not for Abdulaziz ibn Saud, for the Ummah to establish the government which will rule over this land. That is his proclamation in 1924. But in cricket it's called playing for time. He did this because in April of 1924, Al-Azhar University had responded to the Turkish abolition of the Khilafah. What did they do? Al-Azhar University declared that this was bid'ah and haram to abolish the Khilafah. And therefore we must respond to it. And the response of Al-Azhar is that we must have a mu'tamar, a conference, which would meet and which would appoint a new Khalifa. As soon as Al-Azhar issued this proclamation, you could see how Britain was trembling. The British government can't digest their food now. They've got to plan some counter strategy. to the initiative of Al-Azhar University. The counter strategy is that Egypt is itself not a free country. It may appear free, but Britain really has control over Egypt. So Britain puts pressure on King Fuad, the father of King Farouk. You're too old to hear about, you're too young to know about this. And King Fuad is now putting pressure on Al-Azhar to hold back on this conference. So for 2 years the conference can't take place. 2 years because of British pressure. The conference finally takes place in June, July of 1926. But Britain uses another counter strategy. She gets Abdulaziz ibn Saud in Mecca to also convene a conference of the world of Islam in Mecca at the time of the Hajj, which is May of 1926. And then Britain and Russia and France and China and all the major powers in Europe all get to work. Massive intervention in the affairs of the world of Islam to ensure that the Cairo conference does not succeed in winning a representative gathering, and that the Mecca conference gets all the Muslims attending it. And they succeeded. The Cairo conference, organized by Al-Azhar University, becomes an essentially Arab conference, because non-Arabs are hardly present. The conference met. The conference decided that the Khilafah was an essential part of the deen, that it was bid'ah and haram to abolish it, that the Khilafah must be restored, but we don't know how to do it. So let's go back home and come back after 1 year. That was the decision. We don't know how to do it. But in Mecca, you had the most successful representation of the entire world of Islam, because Britain really went to work on it. This conference is now convened, but strangely for the Wahhabi movement. Strangely for the Wahhabi movement, which is a religious movement, which declares that it is bringing back the original Islam and removing all the extraneous things which had been added, and cutting out all the shirk. So this is the real Islam. Well, then how come you don't even have the subject of the Khilafah in your agenda for your conference? We asked the Wahhabi movement, give us an answer. There is no answer. The answer is that the Wahhabi-Saudi alliance is now perpetrating a gigantic, a massive betrayal of Islam in abandoning the Khilafah. And so the conference takes place. But the subject of the Khilafah is not even on the agenda of the conference. Instead, Abdulaziz ibn Saud approaches the conference twice, himself in person, and he asks the conference to recognize him as Al-Malik. That his rule should be recognized over the Hijaz. When the conference had heard His Majesty the King on both occasions, and the conference is now sitting down to discuss the matter, shall we recognize Saudi Wahhabi rule over the Hijaz? The leader of the Indian Muslim delegation jumped up to speak first. He spoke first. His name was Maulana Muhammad Ali Jawhar. He got up and he told the king, get lost. We'll never do that. As soon as the leadership of the Indian Muslim delegation had established its position of rejecting the claim of the Saudi Wahhabi leadership for sovereignty and control over the Hijaz, the rest of the delegates couldn't say, That was the power of a man who knew Islam and lived Islam. And so the conference ended without giving to the Saudi Wahhabi rule over the Hijaz recognition. They decided that they'll meet every year, but that was the last time they ever met. This then was the response of the world of Islam to the abolition of the Khilafah. In 1930, I think, or 31, Hajj Amin al-Hosein in Jerusalem felt that the ominous advance of the Jews in the Holy Land required a response from the world of Islam. So he sought to reconvene the conference in Jerusalem. But it was a new conference. It gave it a new name in 1930 or 31. They call it the Al-Aqsa Conference, or the Mu'tamar al-Am. And this conference also met in 1930-31, but you're meeting to establish Darul Islam in a territory which is under British rule. Nothing could be more foolish than that. How can you restore Darul Islam when you're meeting in a territory which is under British rule? And you have to get permission from the British government to hold your conference. So the conference ended without being able to do anything about it. Since then to this day, there has been no effort, no significant effort on the part of the world of Islam to restore the Khilafah. Why? Simple. Because you cannot restore the Khilafah unless and until you can liberate the Hijaz, Makkah and Medina. You can't do that when the Hijaz, the security of the Hijaz is underwritten by Uncle Sam. What is the replacement of the Khilafah? Around the world, beginning with the secular Republic of Turkey, and then an Iran which resembles a Shia republic, but essentially is a secular republic, and then the secular Republic of Pakistan, which of course has now become the American Republic of Pakistan. And then in 1933, the Republic of Saudi Arabia, but they're parading as a monarchy, but it's actually a secular state, because it has all the trappings of a secular state. A secular state has territorial sovereignty. The state of Saudi Arabia has territorial sovereignty. A secular state has citizenship. Once upon a time when I went to Mecca, I was Muslim. And the only difference between me and my fellow Muslim who was resident in Mecca was that I was Musafir and he was Sakin. Other than that, we're the same. But now, I am a foreigner. If this is not bid'ah, I should change my name. I am now a foreign national, and they are Saudis. And all the oil that Dajjal discovered underneath the soil belongs to them. They own it. So what about Abdulaziz ibn Saud's proclamation that this entire land belongs to the world of Islam? That's forgotten. That's why they hate me for reminding you of these things. The entire world is now embraced, the entire world of Islam is now embraced by the modern secular state. Now let me say to you before I leave Australia, any Muslim, whenever I talk on two subjects, a lot of people now begin to behave strangely towards me. But while it pains my heart, it will not change me, because I do not teach Islam to please people. I try to do it to please my Lord. When I talk on the subject of riba, some people begin to hate me. Yeah, it doesn't matter. When I talk on this subject also, when a Muslim pledges his allegiance to the modern secular state and to its constitution, which declares that Allah is no longer Al-Malik, no longer Al-Akbar, no longer Al-Hakam. The state is now Al-Malik, Al-Akbar, and Al-Hakam. And the state can make halal what Allah made haram. when a Muslim pledges his allegiance, and you've got to do that to get citizenship. Oh yeah, can't get a US passport without pledging allegiance. When you do that, you commit shirk. If you don't believe me, no problem, no problem. When you reach the grave, then you will see. When a Muslim goes and votes in the elections to constitute the government which will preside over this shirk, you enter into shirk. But if you don't believe me and you want to go and vote in the elections, I am not stopping you. So don't let there be any bad blood between us. I'm not stopping you. But when you enter in the grave and you find that you've entered into shirk, do not plead ignorance, that's all. Stand up like a man and take it on that day. This is now the universal shirk that the Prophet ﷺ had prophesied. He said the time would come when shirk will be everywhere, be so difficult to recognize it. However, as difficult as it would be to recognize a black ant on a black stone on a dark night. So if you did not recognize it before this lecture, don't be surprised, but now you know. This universal secular state is now used to embrace all of mankind, including the world of Islam, in political globalization. So that eventually you have one government over all of mankind, eventually the Jews will now rule the world using that structure. That's about to happen. We already made significant progress towards that day. When you read this book, Jerusalem in the Quran, which I believe is the first and only book on the subject, because you couldn't write this book before 1948. Nobody could write it before 1948. Not in 1400 years of this history. In fact, it was difficult to write this book in 1948. It's easy to write it now, but difficult to write it at that time. When you read this book, then you'll understand why it is, I say, that we are now located at that moment in time when one ruling state is about to give way to another, that the state of Israel is about to replace the United States as the ruling state in the world. When Israel takes over from the United States with that big war which is about to take place, and the American economy collapses and the US dollar collapses and all the paper money in the world collapses, and this is going to be my lecture next Wednesday, inshallah, on Islam and the international monetary system, please come to it. Then we see that transfer of power. Israel takes control of the oil, for example, of the Middle East. When Israel becomes the ruling state in the world, then the Jews will say, the golden age has come again. The prophecy is being fulfilled. But they're being deceived in the grandest and most magnificent deception mankind has ever witnessed. No, this is not the golden age. You've been deceived by Al-Masih al-Dajjal. Israel will rule the world for a day which is like a week. If you disagree with me, you say, we never heard this before. Our sheikhs who taught us Islam, they never talked about this, so you must be wrong. My response is wait and see. That's all. I don't have to say anything more than that. How long will a day which is like a week last? How long? How long will Israel rule the world? And what will be our predicament during that time? This is what I spoke about last night. You cannot establish Islam at the macro level, so go ahead and establish at the micro level. The jihad is already in force to liberate the Holy Land. No one can stop that jihad. No one can stop it. The jihad is already in force to liberate the territory from where the army will come, from Khorasan. No one can stop that jihad. When you see that army coming from Khorasan, the Prophet said, go and join that army, even if you have to crawl over ice. Because no one will be able to stop that army until it reaches Jerusalem. When a day which is like a week has come to an end, and we will know that because the water in the Sea of Galilee would have dried up. That is the time when these events are now going to take place. The advent of Imam al-Mahdi, Dajjal appearing in a day which is like our day, so we'll see him as a Jew, etc., and the Son of Mary coming down. There are some of you who have become a bit uncomfortable with my statement that I said it would be perhaps within the next 50 years. And I went on to say, I can be wrong. If this statement is uncomfortable to you, I can make another statement which means exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. I can say that I expect the Sea of Galilee to dry up in about 50 years. I hope you'd have no objections to that. Huh? But it's the same thing. Because it is when the water in the Sea of Galilee dries up that the Son of Mary will come back down. Go and read your Sahih Muslim. It is at that time, and go and notice the water level in the Sea of Galilee now. It is lower than it has ever been before in history, and Lebanon is about to take water out of the river. What's the name of the river? Litany? Huh? Whatever is the name of the river. Lebanon is about to take water out of that river, and Israel is saying, if you do that, we're going to wage war against you. Why? Because that water runs into the Sea of Galilee. Yes. And so the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is now moving to center stage. If I say 50 years, and if I say I can be wrong, at least I'm giving you a wake-up call. A wake-up call that you're living in the age of the countdown. So don't be fighting each other over chicken feed. That's what you're doing. In South Africa in particular, the ulama fighting with each other. Sectarian conflicts over chicken feed. While this hugely important subject is so far away from them, it is unbelievable. When the water in the Sea of Galilee is drying up, and the state of Israel has ruled the world for a day which is like a week, then in Sahih Muslim we are told, a Muslim ruler will die and there will be disagreement concerning succession. And then a man is going to come out of Mecca. His name will be my name and his father's name will be my father's name, said the Prophet ﷺ. He'll have a broad forehead and a large nose. And he'll be known as Al-Mahdi. And he'd hurry from Medina to Mecca. As he approaches Mecca, people are going to come out to him, so this has to be a well-known person. Not some obscure non-entity, a well-known person. When the people of Mecca come out to him, they'll force him to accept the bay'ah, the oath of allegiance which legitimizes the leadership of the Amir al-Mu'mineen, bay'ah. He will accept the bay'ah at the Kaaba and then proclaim himself to be Al-Mahdi. It is only then that you would know that Al-Mahdi is here. So stop asking these foolish questions. Is he born already? Is he in Lebanon? Or maybe in Indonesia? That's foolishness. Al-Mahdi cannot emerge until Israel has become the ruling state in the world. Al-Mahdi cannot emerge until Dajjal has completed his mission. Al-Mahdi cannot emerge until this state of Israel has ruled the world for a day which is like a week. Al-Mahdi cannot emerge until the water has dried in the Sea of Galilee. So stop these foolish questions. He proclaims himself to be the Mahdi. There are going to be eclipses of the sun and the moon that month. But there have been eclipses of the sun and the moon in the past. But after he proclaims himself Al-Mahdi, he's going to be attacked from an army, with an army from Sham. That army comes down to the south, and armies are under the control of governments. And when that army is between Medina and Mecca going down south, the earth is going to open and swallow that army. That is the sign of all signs. Beyond a shadow of a doubt, validating the claim of this man that he is the Mahdi. But Mecca has never been a Shia city. Never. And Mecca will not be a Shia city at that time. And Mecca will not come out to give allegiance to a Shia. And so you have to be living on the moon to believe that the Mahdi is going to be Shia. We do not say this to embarrass the Shia, or to be uncharitable to them, or to hurt their feelings in any way. This is just factual analysis. When the earth opens and swallows that army, then on that day, those from the world of the Shia who accept him as the Mahdi and follow him are our brothers in faith. And shoulder to shoulder we'll fight to liberate the Holy Land. But those from the Shia, and we anticipate that there will be those, who will now reject him as the Mahdi because he is not Shia. You're not our brothers in faith. And you will not fight with us shoulder to liberate the Holy Land. When the army is swallowed, then the Mahdi is going to be attacked by another army, and this is now an army of the Quraysh, an army of the Kalb. And remember that armies are under the control of governments. The Mahdi will defeat this army, and when our army is defeated, that is the end of Saudi Arabia. Goodbye to bad rubbish. Goodbye to bad rubbish. Let it be recorded in my book tonight. Let it be recorded in your book tonight. Goodbye to bad rubbish. The most monstrous betrayal of Islam ever committed in history, committed by those who control that state. Now Darul Islam is restored. Yeah, this is Islam, not that. And let it be clear that there are so many Salafi Muslims in Saudi Arabia, in prison, because they too are struggling for the same thing that I am struggling, to liberate that land. Let it be clear that there's a man like Sheikh Safar al-Hawali, who is at the forefront, intellectually, spiritually, and theoretically, at the forefront. I benefited from his thought. And so do not remain with this sectarian conflict and describe that masjid, Salafi masjid, this one Sunni masjid, this one Indonesian masjid, that one Malay masjid. I thought the masjid was the house of Allah. Has it changed? When Darul Islam is restored in the Arabian Peninsula, this is now the most dangerous and potent of all threats to the state of Israel. Dajjal will now attack. He's now in a day which is like our day. And so we'll see him, a Jew, a young man, powerful, built, curly hair. But I'm not saying anything about his eyes because you understand the hadith about the eyes now. The Prophet ﷺ pointed his hands to the east 20 times. And he said he's going to come from the east. Jerusalem is northwest. When Israel attacked Jamal Abdel Nasser, although Israel is to the east of Egypt, Israel attacked from the west and destroyed the Egyptian Air Force on the ground in the Six-Day War. Similarly, Dajjal is not going to attack from the northwest. He attacks from the east. 20 times, said Muhammad ﷺ. You can come from the east. When he attacks, he's going to be riding on a donkey, which will travel as fast as the clouds. and which his harvest is stretched out wide. I'm going to Perth, inshallah, on Thursday on that donkey. And so we're talking about fighter aircraft. And east of Medina and Mecca is the Saudi Air Force Base, which is now also an American Air Force Base in Dhahran. As they attack Mecca and Medina, the angels defend Mecca and Medina. This is there in Sahih Muslim. And the attack is diverted to Damascus. And then the confrontation takes place. Dajjal is outside and the Imam is inside the masjid. And now history repeats itself. The Jews are rubbing their hands. We got them now. There's no escape. We got them. We have them in our sights now. As someone else was rubbing his hands, as his army was approaching them, and in front of them was the sea, and behind them is the army, and they're rubbing their hands. We got them now. Who was he? Fir'aun. And so history repeats itself. But at the last moment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to Musa alayhi salam, take your rod and strike the water. And then the divine intervention took place, the miracle. And the believers were saved. وَإِذْ فَرَقْنَا بِكُمُ الْبَحْرِ فَأَنْجَيْنَاكُمْ وَأَغْرَقْنَا آلَ فِرْعَوْنَ وَأَنْتُمْ تَنْظُرُونَ. Now history repeats itself. As the Jews are rubbing their hands, we've got them now, we've cornered them. At that last moment, history repeats itself. The son of Mary comes down with his hands resting on the wings of two angels. The first time he came, Allah raised a man. And when the Messiah came, he came in front of that man. And that man said, here he is, this is the man you've been waiting for, this is the Messiah. Who was that man? Yahya alayhi salam. So this is a divine method for positive identification. But Ibn Khaldun, may Allah bless him and have mercy on his soul, that great scholar, we are not fit to clean his shoes. Ibn Khaldun did not understand this. And Muhammad Iqbal, that great scholar, we are not fit to clean his shoes. But Muhammad Iqbal did not understand this. And so many other scholars have not understood it. And they rejected all the ahadith on Mahdi as fabricated. Ibn Khaldun did it and everybody else followed him. But now history repeats itself. The divine method of positive identification is repeated. As the son of Mary comes down in the masjid, Imam al-Mahdi says, here he is, this is the son of Mary. And history repeats itself. May Allah forgive Ibn Khaldun. And then the son of Mary responds and identifies himself. Imam asks him, you lead the salat. He says, no, you are the Imam, you lead. After the salat, then the confrontation takes place between the false Messiah and the true Messiah. And the false Messiah is killed. And then Gog and Magog are destroyed. The Sea of Galilee is dry. And after Gog and Magog are destroyed and Dajjal is killed, now the state of Israel is without any support. Now it's going to be a level battlefield. A level battlefield. I may be wrong, but I suspect that there's going to be a massive collapse of the world of modern technology. I suspect that. And so horses are now going to be used once again. Yeah. The army now comes out of Khorasan, and that army attacks and destroys the state of Israel. The first time it was a Babylonian army. The second time it was a Roman army. And after the Roman army destroyed them and threw them out of the land, Allah said, وَإِنْ عُدْتُمْ عُدْنَا وَإِنْ عُدْتُمْ عُدْنَا. If you return with your fasad, we will return with our punishment. They return with their fasad. It's happening now before your eyes. And so Allah returns with His punishment. وَإِنْ عُدْتُمْ عُدْنَا. And so now the Muslim army destroys the state of Israel. It is at this time that the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, the hadith in Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, you will know who is the true leader amongst the Muslims today. Because he'll not be afraid to quote this hadith. And you'll know those who betray Islam because they will never quote this hadith. Never. They'll lose their jobs. لَتُقَاتِلُنَّ الْيَهُودِ وَلَتَقْتُلُنَّهُمْ حَتَّى يَقُولُ الْحَجَرُ يَا مُسْلِمْ هَذَا يَهُودِيٌّ وَرَائِي فَتَعَالَ فَاقْتُلْ. If you're 17 years of age tonight, this is music in your heart. Yeah. If the beard is grey, well, things are not the same anymore. You will most certainly fight the Jews. And you will most certainly kill them. And at that time the stones will speak. Muslim, there's a Jew hiding behind me. Come and kill him. And so the Holy Land is liberated. This ends the subject of Imam al-Mahdi and the return of the Khilafah. What happens after that we'll pick up in our subject on Jerusalem in the Quran, which will be on Monday night. What I'd like you to do is, if you have any questions, please write them very quickly. We have paper?